Priscilla Presley was 32 years old when she lost the man she had built her whole life around. She was young, she was admired, and photographers followed her everywhere she went. For the next several decades, everyone around her assumed she would eventually remarry, and she never did. Not one single time. So the question people kept circling back to was simple. Why would a woman that young choose to stay single for the rest of her life? Was it love? Was it fear? Or was it a kind of loyalty she never fully explained out loud? Now, in her 80s, sitting for interviews about the man the world knew as the king, she has finally given a straight answer. And it is not the tidy fairy tale reason most people expected. To understand her answer, you have to go back to a quiet military town in West Germany in the autumn of 1959. Priscilla Beaulieu was 14 years old when her stepfather, an Air Force officer, was stationed near Bad Nauheim. Elvis Presley was living in the same area, serving his time in the United States Army, already the most famous singer alive. They met at a house party arranged by someone in his circle. She wore a modest sailor-style dress and barely knew what to say. He was 24, grieving the recent death of his mother, and something about this quiet, dark-haired teenager reminded him of the family he had lost. The age gap was enormous, and her parents were, in her own later words, a nervous wreck about the whole thing. But Elvis arrived at their home in full army uniform, respectful and careful, and slowly he won their permission to keep seeing her. The courtship that followed was unusually controlled. Elvis wanted to shape her, from the makeup on her face to the clothes in her closet. He talked about wanting her to stay innocent until they were married, even as the fan mail and the temptations of fame surrounded him constantly. Back home in Germany, Priscilla's grades started slipping and her attention drifted away from everything that was not him. Her parents tried to pull her back and set limits, and every time they did, she pushed against them harder. When his service ended in 1960 and he returned to Memphis, the letters and late-night phone calls kept coming across the ocean. Priscilla begged her parents to let her visit Graceland, and eventually, under strict conditions, they agreed to a supervised trip when she was just 15. She told them, in the end, that they had to let her go or it would ruin her life. By 1963, she had moved to Memphis for good, living not with Elvis directly, but with his father Vernon in a house just behind the mansion, finishing high school in the city while stepping fully into Presley's world. That world was intoxicating and suffocating in equal measure. The fame, the fans waiting outside after every show, the private jets, and the Cadillacs. Priscilla adjusted to his moods, his rules, and his schedule, and she waited for the day he would finally marry her. That day came in 1967, in a Las Vegas hotel suite, in a ceremony that lasted only a few minutes. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had pushed hard for a quick private wedding to quiet the gossip about the young woman living at Graceland. On the surface, it looked like a dream. Underneath, the doubts were already there. 9 months later, in early 1968, their daughter, Lisa Marie, was born inside a Memphis hospital, and something shifted. Priscilla had spent years being the carefree girl Elvis fell for, and now she was a mother, terrified he no longer saw her the same way. The physical closeness between them faded. He could not explain why, only that he did not feel it anymore, and she stayed anyway, patient and confused inside the enormous quiet of Graceland. Elvis, meanwhile, was carrying weight he refused to share. The touring never stopped. The pressure to stay perfect, to protect the voice and the image and the fan base, sat on him constantly. He had started leaning on prescription pills, some to sleep, some to wake up, some just to numb whatever was underneath. But instead of letting his wife in, he built a wall. He came home from the road with gifts instead of affection, and Priscilla began to feel like a stranger inside her own marriage. If you are enjoying this, please Take a second to subscribe, because the Presley story has more turns like this one, and the next part is where everything finally breaks. Here is where the story turns. Left alone at Graceland with a young child while Elvis chased his comeback across America, Priscilla started looking for something that was just hers. In 1968, she signed up for private dance lessons, and for the first time in years, she felt like a full person again. Not just Elvis Presley's wife. Her instructor, Mike Stone, was attentive and kind in exactly the ways her marriage no longer was. Over time, that connection grew into an affair, and it woke something up in her she could not put back to sleep. In 1972, after months of quietly wrestling with it, Priscilla sat Elvis down and told him the truth. She confessed the affair, and she told him she wanted to leave. It was never really about Mike Stone. It was about the neglect, the control, and the years she had spent becoming someone else's idea of perfect. Elvis was blindsided. In his mind, she had always simply belonged to him, no matter how he behaved, and his reaction swung between grief and raw anger. He even talked about going after Mike Stone until friends talked him down. But Priscilla held firm. In July of 1972, she left Graceland, and the divorce was finalized in October of 1973, with Priscilla taking custody of Lisa Marie. And yet the bond did not snap. This is the strange, telling part of the story. She did not hate him. They stayed in close contact as parents and as old friends, two people who had known each other since she was a teenager. Elvis kept hoping, quietly, that she might one day come back. She never got the chance to find out what a reconciliation might have looked like. Without her steadying presence, and trapped in a relentless touring schedule that Colonel Parker refused to ease, Elvis spiraled. His health declined, the spark in his eyes dimmed, and the house full of people around him could not fill the loneliness. Then, in August of 1977, Elvis Presley died suddenly at Graceland at the age of 42. The news stopped the world. For Priscilla, the call felt like a nightmare she could not wake from, and Lisa Marie was only 9 years old, far too young to lose her father. What Priscilla did next tells you a great deal about her. Lisa Marie inherited the estate, but she was a child, and Graceland was hemorrhaging money, costing a fortune every year just to stay open. There was serious talk of selling it off. Priscilla refused. She took over the estate herself and made the bold call to open Graceland to the public in 1982. Plenty of people doubted her. Within months, she had turned the family home into one of the most visited houses in America, a thriving tribute that still draws fans from around the world. She built her own career too, acting in the Naked Gun comedies and the primetime drama Dallas, becoming a respected figure in her own right rather than only a famous widow. She even found love again, spending more than 2 decades with the producer Marco Garibaldi and having a son, Navarone, in 1987. And still, through all of it, she never married again. So here is the answer she finally gave. It was not that no one ever asked, and it was not that she could not find love. It was that she believed she had already lived through the great love of her life, and that nothing else could ever occupy that same space. She has said, plainly, that being with someone like Elvis changes you forever, and that she had seen him in his most private moments, the joy and the fear and the pain none of the fans ever saw. She has also admitted that she spent so many years learning to think the way he thought and molding herself to fit his world that she lost track of who she was underneath it all. That kind of closeness she came to feel was never going to happen twice. There was loyalty in it too. She believed that even after the divorce, Elvis still loved her, and that marrying another man would have hurt him. In her mind, taking someone else's name would have felt like a quiet betrayal of everything the two of them had shared, even long after he was gone. So she kept the door closed, not out of sadness, but out of a choice she made on purpose. The love never faded, so she never handed that part of herself to anyone else. Instead, she poured that devotion into keeping his memory alive and raising the family they made. She stood beside Lisa Marie through every high and low, became a grandmother, and kept the Presley name rooted in dignity for a new generation. Her strength was never in finding someone new. It was in holding on to the one love that shaped her entire life. If this pulled you in, the story of Lisa Marie Presley and the weight she carried as Elvis's only child is on your screen right now, and it goes somewhere you would not expect.